disadvantaged children, most of all, need you to hold your standards high for them so that they gain the knowledge and the skills that they need to succeed in life. If you keep making excuses for them, then they're not going to achieve the things they need to achieve. And then what happens? I mean, you've always got to ask yourself, when they leave you and they leave school, what happens to them? If they haven't really learned how to read properly, if they're not numerate, then how on earth are they going to succeed in life?
Well, they become a victim.
Well, indeed. And if you are constantly stoking that victimhood, that sense of victimhood in them, because the other thing is that, look, you can see yourself as a victim or you can see yourself as somebody who's going to succeed. And it doesn't really matter whatever background you've got to see yourself as somebody who's going to succeed because you've only got one life. And you've got to be able to make a success of it. And if you're somebody who sits around saying, life is so hard for me, my father was never around, life is hard for me, I'm growing up in the inner city, life is hard for me because I don't have much money. Well, you can do that, and then one day you'll die, and you'll be on your deathbed, you look back and you say, well, I couldn't really do anything with my life because I was an ethnic minority. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You have got, it doesn't matter what, you've got the cards you've got. Those are the cards you were dealt with. There's nothing you can do about those cards, but you can change the way you react to those cards. You are in control of what you do with those cards. And who are we to lower our expectations for these children and say they can't make it? Like, for me, it's just racism. It's straight up racism. And it's racism that I would say is directed also at poor white kids, you know. So it's not just against ethnic minorities. It's against any child who is the other. And too often, the white middle classes other children who are not like them. And they wouldn't do it for their own children. They keep their standards high for their own children, but when it comes to other people's children, they then lower those standards because they feel that it makes them into the nicer person. And actually it doesn't. It makes you into the person who lets those children down. They say, oh no, we need to have more black authors. Well, you know, I'm a black author. You know, I've written books, but never in a million years would I have my children be reading the things I've written over Shakespeare because I haven't been influencing literature for 400 years. If the day
I'd much rather reading what you're reading than some of the other rubbish they're reading, right?
Well, you know, I'm not even judging one way or the other. The fact is that the Western canon is what schools should be about. Now, when you get to university, you know what? You can do a whole variety of different things there. I don't mind that, you know. You want to look at feminist literature, black literature, all sorts of things, that's fine. And in school, I'm not saying you can't have any of that, you know. We do, you know, we were just reading with our sixth formers in the English A-level, we're doing Small Island, which is this wonderful story by Andrea Levy, who writes about black people coming from the Caribbean to Britain on the Windrush and their experiences here. So it's not like we're saying no to any of that, but what we're not doing is campaigning against dead white men. And we include a lot of dead white men in what we do because they're part of the canon. They write beautiful things. I once had a journalist from the Sunday Times, I think it was. He came here and he heard all of our children reciting the poem If by Rudyard Kipling. Yeah. And he said, that's very controversial, Catherine. Are you doing it deliberately? And I said, but it's a very beautiful poem. And not only is it a beautiful poem, it just speaks to the heart of what we're about, right? We want the children to embody those values that are in the poem If.
If you can keep your head when all around lose theirs.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah. If you can, you know, treat triumph and disaster as both the same, you know, there's so many wonderful lines in there.
Yeah, mix with a common man.
Exactly, and not lose the common touch. Yes, yeah. I mean, like, it's just, we choose literature according to what we think will benefit them in terms of values, but also with the canon in mind, because we want them to go off and be culturally literate. So ultimately, you want them to be able to open up a broadsheet newspaper and understand all the references. You want them to be able to read a rose would smell as sweet and know what that means. You want them to understand when they hear on the radio, oh, he's a bit of a Scrooge, and you understand what they mean, you know? Because otherwise, your children, it's not just about being able to decode words. Reading and being successful at reading is not just about decoding. It's about the cultural references that are in the text that you are reading. And there is so much reference to those dead white men, to the Western canon in the West. Look, if we were in China, I wouldn't be suggesting this. We'd be reading Chinese literature, right? So we are looking at British history. We're looking at British literature. We celebrate the Queen's birthday. We sing God Save the Queen and I Vow to Thee My Country and Jerusalem. And we do this with pride because we are all British here. And the idea that white teachers should be telling brown and black children that they're not British, I think it's horrifying. My little brown and black children are just as entitled to call themselves British as any of the white children are. And we're all together as one. What our Britishness does is it brings us together, because when you're in a multicultural community where some of our children are Muslims, some of them are Hindus, some of them are Sikhs, some of them are Christian, we've got children from Eastern Europe, and when I say from, they tend to be second generation, but their grandparents, and sometimes their parents, are from India, from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Jamaica, from all over the Caribbean. The fact is that when you have all of that difference, you need something to hold you together. That's what makes a country. And that's what makes a country successful. It's what helps to make our schools successful, because we're all bound together by the hymns that we sing, by the poetry that we recite, by the history that we learn, which is our history, as opposed to feeling so uncomfortable about it. Now, that doesn't mean we don't tell them the truth. We don't not teach them about the Atlantic slave trade. We teach all the good things and the bad things that happened.